This is also a time of change for my family.
The state dinner had been designed to display unity, discipline, and royal control. Then Prince Harry crossed the room, pulled back the chair reserved for Prince William, and sat down. For several frozen seconds, nobody moved. King Charles stared toward the place meant for his heir, pushed his own chair away from the table, and stormed out, turning one deliberate act into the most humiliating royal confrontation of his reign. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles had entered the chamber expecting order, not rebellion. The state dinner was more than a formal meal. It was a royal occasion where family members, diplomats, household officials, and guests were seated according to rank and responsibility. Every place carried meaning, because the seating plan reflected who stood closest to the crown and who would carry its duties forward. William's chair had been reserved beside Catherine and directly within the king's line of sight, making any mistake impossible to believe. Harry ignored the aide who leaned toward him with a warning. He pulled the chair back, sat down, and rested one hand on the table, as though daring anyone to challenge him. Moments later, William entered with Catherine and stopped near the doorway. The prince felt disbelief, then anger, but refused to give his brother the satisfaction of an outburst. Catherine watched her husband remain standing beside the place assigned to him, and her silence carried its own accusation. Camilla saw Charles's face harden and urged him under her breath not to react before the guests. The queen consort knew that one public explosion could dominate every conversation beyond the palace, but she also knew the insult had struck at the succession itself, the legal order determining who inherits the throne and assumes the monarch's responsibilities. Charles said nothing. He lifted his napkin, placed it beside his untouched plate, and pushed his chair back with a force that silenced the room. Harry did not rise. The younger son held his position, while his father turned toward him. "You knew whose place that was," the king said, making clear that he saw intention rather than confusion. Then Charles walked out, leaving diplomats frozen, Camilla shaken, and Catherine watching William choose his next move. William did not follow the monarch. He crossed the room slowly, stopped beside Harry, and placed one hand on the back of the stolen chair. His brother finally looked up. Neither man smiled, and neither looked away. But Charles's departure was only the first rupture, because the two brothers were now standing face to face beside the chair that had divided them. To everyone else, it was a chair. To William, it represented duty, succession, and years of carrying a future he had never been permitted to escape. To Harry, it represented the place from which he believed he had been pushed aside. Yet the deepest wound belonged to Charles, who had entered the dinner hoping to present his sons beneath one roof, and left after watching their oldest resentment become a public challenge to the crown. William stood behind the occupied place and kept his voice low. The Prince of Wales, the title given to the monarch's direct heir, was expected to protect the dignity of the institution even when his own family tested it. That burden mattered because one angry reaction from him could turn a private insult into a national crisis. Harry, however, had entered the evening already feeling like an outsider. His movements had been restricted, his ceremonial role reduced, and every palace instruction reminded him that he no longer stood beside his brother as an equal. William tightened his hand around the chair and asked whether humiliating their father was truly why Harry had returned. The younger brother looked up without apology. He said he was tired of being told where he could stand, where he could sit, when he could speak, and whether he still belonged. His answer exposed years of resentment, not a careless decision made in the heat of the moment. Catherine saw the future king's restraint beginning to crack, and placed her fingers gently against his wrist. The Princess of Wales, the wife of the heir and his closest public partner, understood that her touch might prevent the confrontation from exploding before diplomats and senior officials. Harry then revealed, through a recorded conversation he had kept from an earlier palace call, that he had requested a seat nearer to Charles several days before the dinner. Officials had refused him. He said the occupied chair was therefore not stolen by accident. It was a message aimed at the family that had pushed him outward. William answered that the seating request had been rejected personally by the king. That detail changed the tension instantly. Their father had anticipated conflict before either son entered the room, which meant the dinner had never been as peaceful as it appeared. A senior aide approached and quietly ordered Harry to rise. He refused. The returning son said he would remain seated until Charles came back and faced him directly. William stepped closer, while Catherine kept her hand near his arm, ready to stop the next movement before it became irreversible. The empty place beside the table was no longer about rank alone. It had become a challenge to the monarch's authority. And the reason Charles had feared this exact challenge could be traced back to a private ceremony, where Harry had already crossed a line no one inside the palace could forget. The confrontation did not begin at the state dinner. Its true origin lay 6 weeks earlier, inside a private Windsor ceremony attended by only a handful of relatives and senior courtiers. That afternoon, Harry had been offered a carefully limited place within the family gathering. Instead of accepting it, he challenged William's precedence in front of Charles and forced the king to make a decision that transformed private resentment into a coming act of defiance. Charles had planned the ceremony as a quiet statement of continuity. William was receiving a family honor for taking on wider responsibilities, and the occasion was meant to show that authority would pass steadily from monarch to heir. A family honor was a private royal distinction recognizing service rather than a public award granted by the government. Harry had been invited as a son and brother, but he held no ceremonial role. His seat behind the working royals made the separation unmistakable, because everyone present could see who remained inside the institution and who now stood beyond its official structure. Harry watched William step forward and accept the honor without hesitation. During the reception, the younger son approached Charles and demanded that his name be entered beside his brother's in the official family record, the written account preserving who participated and why the ceremony mattered. The king refused. He told him affection could not erase responsibility, and that equal love between sons did not create equal constitutional duties. Harry's restraint broke. He accused his father of hiding favoritism behind service, rank, and tradition. William overheard the final words and moved closer, hoping to calm them before the argument reached the courtiers nearby. His brother turned toward him and said, "You never have to ask for a place. They build the room around you." The prince remained silent, but the accusation shook him because it reduced years of duty, pressure, and sacrifice to simple privilege. Charles ended the exchange with a direct order. From that moment, all future ceremonial seating had to be approved through the king's office, meaning his personal staff would control every place before any royal gathering. The restriction targeted Harry without naming him, and the returning son understood exactly why it had been imposed. Harry left Windsor carrying more than anger. As he passed an aide gathering documents, he noticed the preliminary state dinner plan inside an open folder. William's chair appeared beside Catherine and close to Charles, marked clearly as the heir's place. He remembered it. Now the monarch understood the truth. The dinner insult had not been sudden. It had been planned from the moment that Windsor door closed. With the hidden trigger finally exposed, Charles returned to the dining room not as a wounded father, but as a king prepared to confront the son who had planned his defiance. When the doors opened again, the room expected servants, advisors, or an announcement that the dinner had been cancelled. Instead, Charles returned alone. His face was calm, but the calm carried more danger than anger. Harry remained in William's chair. William stood several feet away. Then the monarch walked directly between his sons, placed one hand on the table, and demanded an answer to the question everyone else was too frightened to ask. Charles had spent several minutes in an adjoining room, while advisors urged him to stay away. They wanted household officials to remove Harry quietly and protect the dinner from further scandal. The king rejected that plan. A household official was a senior palace employee responsible for managing royal events and enforcing the monarch's instructions, but Charles knew sending staff would make him look afraid to face his own son. When he returned, every guest remained seated. William had refused another chair because taking it would suggest that rank, duty, and succession could be rearranged by whoever acted most boldly. Charles stopped before Harry and held his gaze. "Did you take that chair to wound your brother, or to challenge me?" he asked. The Duke of Sussex, the title Harry retained after stepping away from active royal work, had no statement, aid, or interview behind which to hide. He answered that he had taken the place because every decision inside the palace told him he no longer had a father. He had only a monarch who judged his sons by usefulness. The words struck hard. Charles flinched, but he did not retreat. The monarch told Harry that pain did not excuse turning a family grievance into a spectacle. By taking William's place, he had punished his brother, humiliated Catherine, and forced every guest to witness a conflict that should never have crossed the palace doors. Harry pressed his hands against the table and refused to rise. He demanded that Charles admit the seating plan had been designed to diminish him. The king answered that protocol, the fixed system governing rank and position at royal events, was not humiliation. It was the structure holding the institution together when family feeling collapsed. William finally stepped forward. The prince said the chair was no longer the real issue. The betrayal was forcing their father to choose between protecting his son and protecting the crown. Harry looked toward him, but the future king did not soften. Charles straightened and issued one final order. Every diplomat, courtier, and guest was to leave immediately. Only the immediate family would remain. Once the guests were removed, the dinner ceased to be a ceremony and became a private struggle over who still possessed the power to define Harry's place. With the chamber emptied, the silence changed. There was no audience left to impress, and no ceremony left to preserve. Camilla stood beside Charles, Catherine remained near William, and Harry still occupied the disputed chair. What followed was no longer about etiquette. It was about control. Who could command the room, who could influence the king, and whether William would demand the punishment of his own brother or protect him one final time. Charles possessed the authority to remove Harry immediately and restrict his access to future palace gatherings. That power mattered because state occasions were not private family meals. They were formal events representing the crown before officials, diplomats, and the nation. Yet the king also understood the danger. One furious order could turn the duke into a public symbol of rejection and make the monarchy appear less disciplined than wounded. Camilla urged her husband to act before hesitation became surrender. The queen consort warned that allowing Harry to remain in William's place would weaken every boundary imposed since he left royal duties. Those boundaries separated working royals, family members carrying official responsibilities on behalf of the monarch, from relatives who no longer represented the institution. She believed the room was testing whether those limits meant anything. Charles lifted the place card bearing William's name and turned it slowly between his fingers. The monarch studied the small piece of card as though it carried the weight of both sons. Harry watched without speaking. For one moment, the authority of the crown disappeared beneath the pain of a father who knew any choice would deepen the wound. Catherine moved closer to William and spoke quietly. She told the prince that he had to decide whether he wanted his chair restored or his brother removed, because demanding both could destroy the last path back between them. Her words steadied him. He looked at Harry, then approached Charles and asked that the younger son receive one final chance to stand voluntarily. Camilla challenged him at once. She warned that mercy would be read as weakness, and that Harry had already rejected more than one opportunity to end the confrontation. William answered that obedience forced by guards would protect the room, but destroy the family. The future king wanted his brother to choose respect, not merely submit to power. Charles accepted the request, but his mercy carried a final condition. If Harry refused again, the king would personally withdraw every invitation to future state occasions, official ceremonies where attendance signified continued recognition by the crown. William turned toward his brother and delivered the ultimatum himself. Harry's expression tightened. Everyone waited for the smallest movement. The decision now rested not in Charles's command, but in whether Harry could rise from the chair without believing he had surrendered his last claim to belonging. William gave Harry 10 seconds. There was no shouting, no dramatic countdown, and no guard waiting at the door. The heir simply stood before his brother and asked him to rise. Harry looked at Charles, then at the place card still held in the king's hand. For one brief moment, it appeared he might surrender the challenge. Instead, he leaned back in William's chair and forced his father to carry out the threat. William kept the appeal personal. He did not speak as the Prince of Wales or invoke palace authority. He spoke as a brother, giving Harry a path out without public defeat. That distinction mattered because an official order would become part of the royal record, the formal written account of decisions made in the monarch's name, and could later be described as an expulsion. Charles remained silent for the same reason. The king wanted the choice to belong entirely to his younger son. Harry's face tightened when William said, "Stand up, and we can speak as brothers." The Duke looked directly at him and answered that they had stopped speaking as brothers long before that evening. The words landed harder than anger. The future king did not reply, but Catherine saw the change in him immediately. His grip loosened. His expression lost its fury. What remained was grief, because Harry was no longer simply refusing a chair. He was choosing the confrontation over the last offer of family. Charles lowered the place card and delivered the consequence. The monarch withdrew Harry's state dinner invitation at once and declared that he would attend no future official royal occasion without written approval. Written approval meant direct permission recorded through the king's office, removing any assumption that family connection alone guaranteed access. The decision mattered because it placed Harry outside ceremonial royal life and made every future return dependent on his father's consent. Harry rose only after the punishment had been announced. That movement exposed the truth. He had always been capable of standing, yet he had remained seated until the cost became irreversible. He turned toward William, placed the name card before him, and said, "You can have the place. That was never what I wanted." Charles understood the message immediately. The chair had been a weapon, not the prize. Harry had targeted his father's refusal to recognize the pain beneath his anger, while William had been used as the pressure point between them. Hours later, the prince found his brother alone in a palace corridor. Harry had not left. William stopped several steps away, and for once, neither man had the king standing between them. Beyond the emptied dining room, the brothers would finally confront the wound beneath the chair and decide whether anything personal remained after the royal punishment. Harry was standing alone when William found him. No aides waited nearby. No cameras recorded the meeting. Beyond the closed doors, the palace was already managing the consequences. But in that narrow corridor, there was no king, no heir, and no disputed chair. There were only two brothers carrying different versions of the same childhood, and a final conversation that neither institution nor protocol could conduct for them. William saw the coat folded over Harry's arm and understood that his brother had not truly tried to leave. The private exit offered a quiet route away from the formal rooms, but the younger son remained beside it, as though waiting for one last person to follow. Without Charles or Camilla present, the dispute lost its constitutional weight. Protocol, the rules governing rank and conduct inside royal life, could no longer speak for either man. What remained was personal, painful, and impossible to hide behind titles. William asked why Harry had chosen his chair instead of coming to him privately. The prince kept his voice steady, but the question carried exhaustion. His brother admitted that earlier conversations had ended with sympathy, promises, and no real change. Each time, Harry had been told that the palace understood his pain, while the same restrictions remained in place. He believed another quiet discussion would disappear into silence. Harry then confessed that seeing William's name beside Charles had made him feel erased before the dinner began. The younger brother said the seating plan confirmed what he had feared. The family still had a place for him in private memory, but not in its future. William answered that he had never chosen to become the symbol of everything Harry believed he had lost. Every attack on his position also struck the brother who had once defended him when no one else understood his anger. The truth came next. Harry admitted, in that unrecorded private conversation, that he knew Charles would leave the room. He had counted on the king's reaction exposing the division before every guest present. William absorbed the confession in silence. Then he told him that humiliating their father had not revealed the wound. It had made the wound deeper and harder to heal. Harry lowered his eyes. For the first time that night, he acknowledged that his anger had become more important than the people he claimed to want back. The admission did not repair the damage, but it ended the defiance. He agreed to leave quietly. William promised to tell Charles exactly what had been said. The brothers did not embrace, and forgiveness did not arrive. But rebellion gave way to accountability. By dawn, the private confession would become a public crisis, and one image from outside Buckingham Palace would define how the world understood the night. The palace hoped to contain the dinner behind closed doors, but silence only sharpened the world's curiosity. By sunrise, the story was everywhere. A son in his brother's chair, a king leaving his own state dinner, and an heir left standing before foreign guests. Yet one image captured the crisis more powerfully than any headline: the reserved place remaining empty after Harry's departure, with William's name card returned, but the meal untouched. Palace officials released a restrained statement confirming that Harry had left early after a private family disagreement. The words were designed to protect everyone involved, but they only exposed how serious the rupture had become. A palace statement was an official message issued in the monarch's name to control public understanding of royal events. Broadcasters immediately treated the incident as more than a quarrel. They described it as a test of whether Charles had acted as a wounded father, a defending king, or both at once. The London Herald captured the crisis before breakfast. Its front page showed the empty chair beneath the headline, "The Seat Between Two Sons," while Charles's abandoned place remained visible across the table. The image carried everything the palace had failed to explain: Harry's anger, William's humiliation, and the monarch's inability to hold the family together, even during a ceremony built to display control. Charles read the newspaper alone. The king folded it slowly and placed it beside his plate without touching his tea. He understood that his private anguish had become a national symbol. Beyond Buckingham Palace, a crowd gathered near the gates. Some supported his defense of William's position, while others held signs urging him not to lose his younger son forever. The debate mattered because the monarchy survived through public trust, and every act of discipline now risked looking like emotional exile. William rejected his advisor's demand for a direct condemnation. The prince insisted that the palace statement must not become a campaign against Harry. He believed accountability was necessary, but public humiliation would only repeat the damage done inside the dining room. Charles then learned that his heir had spoken privately with his brother after the punishment. For one tense moment, the monarch feared concessions had been offered that might weaken his authority. William requested a meeting before the morning briefing. He entered carrying the recovered place card and placed it before his father. The future king was ready to explain Harry's confession, the anger behind the challenge, and the decision the crown could no longer avoid. The public had delivered its judgment in headlines, but the final verdict would be decided privately between Charles and William over the name card that started it all. Charles did not reverse the punishment. Harry would no longer enter state occasions on personal expectation, and William's position would never again be treated as a stage for family protest. Yet when the heir placed the recovered name card before his father, the king understood that authority alone could not repair what had happened. The chair had been restored, the order had survived, but the illusion of a family united beneath the crown was gone forever. William met Charles privately the following morning and explained exactly what Harry had admitted in their corridor conversation. The prince confirmed that his brother had understood the seating plan and had taken the chair to force recognition of his exclusion. A state function was an official royal occasion conducted in the monarch's name, which meant access could never depend only on family ties. The confession mattered because it proved the insult had been planned, yet it also showed that the anger behind it came from pain rather than confusion. William then told his father that Harry had recognized the cruelty of humiliating him before foreign guests. The future king did not ask for the punishment to disappear. He asked Charles to see remorse, without pretending the offense had been undone. The king listened, placed the name card beside the formal instruction, and signed the order requiring written approval before his younger son could attend any future state occasion. Camilla urged a complete personal ban, warning that uncertainty would invite another challenge. The queen consort believed firm separation offered the safest protection for the crown. Charles refused. He restricted Harry's official access, but he would not permanently close the private door between father and son. The monarch knew discipline could defend the institution, yet total rejection might destroy what remained of the family. William made one request of his own. He asked that no palace official use the incident to attack his brother publicly. Defending the succession, the legal path through which the crown passes to the next monarch, did not require stripping Harry of dignity. Charles agreed, then admitted the truth he had hidden since leaving the dinner. Storming out had not been strategy. It had been the reaction of a father who could not bear watching one son erase the other before him. Harry left Britain without returning to the palace. His protest had won attention, but it cost him the freedom to enter royal life on his own terms. Charles retained control. William's place remained secure, yet the family paid for that order with another piece of trust. The king placed the recovered card inside his private desk, preserving it as a warning. The chair returned to its rightful place, but every person in that room understood the final truth. The monarchy had protected its future only by admitting that its family could never return to its past. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.